At this point, our animation is on our secondary or biped skeleton, ready for export. What we need to do is to store the animation on the clips instead. This makes for easier animation management in both XSI and Ogre as well. So here we have our animation that's been taken from the biped rig and put into the biped skeleton. At this point, we really have no more use for our biped rig, so let's get rid of it to just keep the resources nice and lean. We can do that by middle clicking the biped model and hitting the delete key to get rid of it. It'll get rid of everything in there, and the animation will move a little bit faster for us. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take all the animation on here and store it as an animation clip. If you open up the biped skeleton, you'll see it has its mixer in there. You can open up the sources folder, the animation folder, and we just have the default pose in here. What we want to do is we want to take the animation from frames 1 to 24 and store it as a walk cycle clip. This is going to be very easy to do. An easy way of doing it is just maybe middle click the global SRT here. With the global SRT just branch selected, so it has everything in here selected. We just need to go to actions, store. We want to go to transformations F curves. Let's left click to execute it, and now it'll bring up the dialog box. And first thing we may want to do is to change the name of the action. I'm going to just go ahead and call it walk. Instead of starting the default in at 0, let's change that to 1, so it's just 1 to 24, just what we have down here, and that should be most of it. Usually what I like to do is to remove the original animation so we can just work with the mixer itself. Just leave it checked on as it is by default. Click on OK, and you can see all the animation there has been taken out. You may notice that the character is initially distorted like that. No big deal, that's because there's no animation in there. Let's bring up the mixer. You can bring up the mixer by going to View, Animation, Animation Mixer. The shortcut key is Alt 0. Bring up the animation mixer here. I'm going to take a couple of seconds just to resize this to fit it in here. So right now we can see the track is empty. All we can do is just go in here, select the walk clip, drag and drop it into the mixer, and place it here at frame 1. Very simply like so. Now you'll see our character is back to normal, and he's walking like so, but this time the animation is stored in the walk clip. The reason why we want to do this is because if you just export Ogre, if you export to the Ogre format with the animation in the bones, Ogre will actually remove that animation. So to prevent that from happening and to keep it safe, store everything you need in the mixer. That'll keep things nice and clean. The mixer is anyway a very more organized way of dealing with the animation, so put everything in there. Now we have the animation in the mixer, we just need to export the mesh and the skeleton. Let's go in and do that. The way I recommend you do it is select the mesh. With the mesh selected, you'll be able to export the mesh and the skeleton along with it. With the mesh selected, go to the File menu, and then we need to scroll down to Export and move down to Ogre Mesh Skeleton. Let's left click it. It's going to bring up the Mesh Skeleton Export dialog. It's going to tell us what we're going to export in here. We're just exporting the low resolution body. Let's go in and decide where we want to put this. Click on the ellipse button. And usually a good place to put this would be in our folder or in our project folder for the game itself for Ogre. We don't have that set up just yet, so let's just temporarily store it in the models folder here. We'll go in and grab those later in the next lesson. We'll give it a name. I'm going to call this just our low res, LORES. Very simple. And just click OK. So we have the low res mesh selected. It's going to ask a few things. Do we merge all the objects with the same material? There's only one object we're taking out, so this doesn't help us right now. It's going to ask if you want to export the children. You can leave that selected. It doesn't have any children in there. Leave the calculate edge list on if you want to work with stencil shadows. Now usually what we could do is we can turn on calculate tangents, which can help us with the normal mapping and parallax mapping phase. But we don't want to do that because I've noticed, or at least in this particular scenario, that the normals ended up getting a little bit warped. So we won't turn that on. Instead, we'll generate the normals in the code itself, which is a little bit of a safer way of doing it. Let's go to the materials. This is where we can export the shaders on our character. Usually you want to use an OpenGL or some kind of real-time shader if you want this to work. What we're going to do instead is we're going to use some of the other shaders or some of the other materials that Ogre has, so you can turn that off. We're not going to work with that right now. And we're also going to copy the textures manually, so you can turn this off as well. Now here's where what we're really concerned with. We don't have any shape animation on here, so we can turn off vertex animation. We do want to export the skeleton, so we'll leave that turned on. Because we went ahead and decided where the model we're going to put in the models folder, we're going to put the mesh in the models folder, it's going ahead and put the skeleton in, it's going to go ahead and put the skeleton in that folder as well. So that's already taken care of. The frames per second is 29, that's good enough. Now the really cool thing about Ogre's exporter is it can let us define what animations we want to take out, and along what length of the timeline of animation do we want to use. A bunch of options. Right now it's gone ahead and it's used the walk clip here. Let's change the name from walk clip to just walk here very simply. So this name over here is very important, because this is how we can ask Ogre to play this particular animation. We just tell Ogre, find this animation state called walk and play it. Now we're going to send out frames 1 to 24, which is good. The sample frequency is also important. If there's any IK in here, it'll go in and plot the IK to FK. And this sample frequency defines how many frames do we go by before we start to bake a keyframe for it. 5 is like your step value. 5 may not be enough. You can take this to 1 or 2. Usually I find 2 is a good amount. If we had more animation in here, we'd be able to pile this up. But that's all we have for now, and that's what we're going to use. So let's just click OK. And it'll export the mesh. And then it'll export the animation. So that's how it works. So if I go in and open up that folder, I'm going to pause the video and find that folder and bring it up. And in that folder, we should be able to see our low-res and low-res mesh and the low-res skeleton in here. So we've got our mesh out, we've got its skeleton out, and its animation out. All we need to do now is to start coding our game with the Ogre and start getting our and load the resources in. I'm going to go ahead and show you what the result looks like already. And I'm just running Ogre on the side here. Click OK. And it's just running it. And here's what we have. Our character has been exported. And here's our character walking inside of the Ogre window. So that's pretty neat, but I've already prepared this beforehand. What we'll do now is we'll take the character that we have exported just now, and we'll start coding inside of C++ and Ogre to get our character in here, and we'll go around and start using some of the normal mapping and parallax mapping stuff while we're at it. This is just the basic texture, no lighting, no nothing. It's just a simple constant shader, and we have our character walking in here. This is just a little bit of an output that we're going to get. Let's go in now, and in the next lesson we'll start getting into setting up Ogre in Microsoft Visual C++.